TitleMatchNetwork.com.
I want to talk about Jimmy Valiant. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, that's it.
Okay, I want to talk about. Actually, I got a long list of guys that I want to discuss.
Okay.
And one of the first guys would be Jimmy Valiant, the Boogie Woogie Man.
Jimmy Valiant. I've often tried to remember exactly when the first time I met Jimmy was, and I honestly can't recall, but I know that I guess Jerry Jarrett brought him into the territory because Jerry was doing the booking then. He brought him into work against me at the time, and Jimmy was just he was one of the coolest, most charismatic individuals that you ever meet in your life. I mean, he was not a great worker, not a great wrestler at all, but he just had a great look. I mean, he was handsome Jimmy. He at that time he had a great physique. He had already, of course, done the Valiant Brother thing in a stint in New York, and came into Memphis as the boy from New York City with that music as his theme song, and he had the long blonde hair, the mustache, and all of this sort of stuff, and he just he really took Memphis and that territory by storm. As I said, mainly because of his interview skills and his look. He was he was a passable wrestler. He could do everything he needed to do in the ring to get by. But what made him and put him way over the top was his look and his interviews. And always a fun guy to work with, always easy to work with. And then, oh gosh, then Jimmy went through some phases where he fell in love with Big Mama. I can't even begin to tell you all of the different things the phases that Jerry Jarrett and I went through with Jimmy Valiant. He was so over in our territory that he left, and then we try to get him desperately to come back, and we even wound up, and this is like still unheard of. I don't know if anybody's ever done this to this day. We went out and bought, he gave us all these conditions to get him to come back. We had to go out and buy Jimmy Valiant a house. we literally went around and shopped and bought this guy a house. And he came back to Memphis and moved Big Mama in it, and we had to have all of the porcelain in the house had to be black. He wanted everything in the house was black. A black tub, black sink, black tile floors. It was like unbelievable. And so we bought Jimmy a house, and he came back and he stayed in Memphis for about maybe in that house for like a month or whatever, and then he just disappeared on us. Went to Atlanta, and so Jerry Jarrett and I were stuck with a house with all black interior, and I don't know how long it took us to try to sell that thing, but we eventually the only way we sold it was some sucker bought it because it had been Jimmy Valiant's house, because it just looked horrible. But Jimmy went to Atlanta and was doing real well down there, and he ballooned up, got real big, and sort of, I thought then really started. I don't know, he almost became a caricature of himself, really kind of taking the shortcuts, but he was doing all it had to do to get over. Jimmy just had to shake his head, shake the ropes, and that sort of thing, and play the music, do the legs, and that was the Boogie Woogie Man is what he became then. And then, of course, he had Big Mama, I think, as a valet, and of course that was his wife, and they had a child, and Jimmy was really happy at that time, and loved to just live. They actually named the kid Little Handsome Junior, and everything was going cool for Jimmy, and I think this is pretty accurate as to what happened but I think when his son was about 10 or 11 years old. As I said, he's living in Atlanta or the Carolinas or something, and they're perfectly happy. And all of a sudden, there's a knock at this door, and Jimmy's wife, Big Mama, goes to the door, and there on the doorstep is a woman and about an 11-year-old kid. And she tells Jimmy's wife that this kid is Jimmy Valiant's son also. And so it was one of those deals where probably like a one-night fling or something, 11 years ago. Handsome Jimmy had been with this woman. They did all the blood tests, and it came back pretty much positive that it was like 99 and 9.9, and I remember asking Jimmy. I said, "What did it say? I mean, what did the test say?" He said, "Brother, it said 99.999," and he said the nine just kept going until it went right off the page. And he said, "That kid's mine." And so, man, his wife left him. Big Mama left him, took his son, and it just like that just crushed Handsome Jimmy. And he moved. He wound up, I think, moving to Virginia or something, up in the woods, and he became like this vegetarian and almost a recluse, and he was just like never the same. Everybody, you see, he lost all this weight, and I think, I honestly think that he just almost grieved himself to death. But he still, he still would make shots and come in, but it just like his heart wasn't in it anymore. And I love Handsome Jimmy to this day, and we had some great matches and some great feuds, and he and I almost got us kicked out of the Mid-South Coliseum because we had a hair against hair match one time, and neither one of us got our heads shaved, and they had a riot and set seats on fire and broke windows out of the Coliseum, and Handsome Jimmy and I have done it all. He's just a great guy. I love him.
What about Bill Dundee?
Bill Dundee, talking about doing it all. I probably had more matches against Bill Dundee than I have against any other single individual in wrestling. Bill and I, for some reason, we had a chemistry that we just really worked well together in the ring, either as partners or as opponents. And I think there was that a real rivalry there. I don't think Bill ever really, for real, ever really liked me, and and Bill and I weren't really, have never been close friends. We never lived in the same city, never socialized, saw each other at the matches, got along, but we're never really big buddies. And so I think that the people realized that came across on TV. There were two sort of big egos clashing there. And, that Jerry Jarrett also realized that, and wound up booking us in, every kind of match imaginable.
Dutch Mantel. Dirty Dutch.
Dirty Dutch Mantel. Dutch, he and I are what we call cosmic brothers. Not only were we weren't just born on the same date, Dutch and I were born on the same day, just a few hours apart. He is older than me, as a matter of fact, by about 6 hours. And so I think, Dutch and I were a lot alike. And Dutch and I sort of got in the business, I think, a lot alike. He had a wrestler that he really admired a lot and emulated. I'll never forget when I first met Dutch. He was wrestling as, of course, Wayne Cowan, but he was trying to be Ox Baker. And Dutch and I had a lot of big matches there in Memphis, but when I think when Dutch and I weren't wrestling against each other, it was always and this caused really a lot of animosity with a lot of guys. And I'm not saying deep hatred or anything like that, but maybe a little bit of resentment. But it really wasn't my fault. It was Jerry Jarrett doing the booking. But if Dutch and I were wrestling each other, we were like in the main event. If we weren't wrestling each other, Dutch was usually in like the semifinal, and I was still wrestling somebody else in the main event. And I think that's there was a little bit of resentment there, but we pretty much always got along until I don't know the last time I saw Dutch. I think he left our territory with one of our championship belts and didn't bring it back, and then he was writing some little wrestling newsletters, and I heard he knocked me a few times, but that's just Dutch and I. But he's I had no real problems with Dutch Mantel.
TitleMatchNetwork.com